Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. It is playoff time. We have series starting. I think it's 2 series starting tomorrow, 2 on Sunday. I saw like the Edmonton one was on hold until they determined who the hell they were playing. So it's spread out over the next few days. Timothy, you're going to hear me talk about the Arizona Coyotes as much as I want to because I'm running the show. So stick it. We'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead.
All right. So much to Anthony's pleasure, the Mets released their City Connect jerseys today, and they're purple, guys. I mean, it's purple outlines with gray, which really gray doesn't even – it hasn't existed for the Mets, and especially that color has never – but really, gray hasn't existed since I like the 80s, because the 80s they had road grays. I mean, as far as full gray, you know.
Yeah, the '86 Mets had gray.
They had the gray, but it's been a while. So I looked at it. I saw, and the stitching. There's nice little railroads. That's great. The hat's not terrible because it's got at least like the Shea Bridge. Okay, fine.
Why is it such a big deal? That's
This is just like the same thing that the NFL did with color matching.
Oh, so is every team?
Or at least every team? I believe every team's doing it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So at the end of the day, I look at it like I look at a lot of things in fashion. I don't get it. There's nothing Mets other than the logo. Otherwise, it just looks ridiculous. But look, if people want to buy it, that's fine. I haven't liked any of them. The Flyers one looked like the font looked like Aquaman. I know that doesn't exist in Word if you look it up, but if you look at the font, you'll see it's the same as like for Aquaman the movie. It's just ridiculous.
Okay, this is the thing, and I have not seen it, but if every team is doing it, that means the Yankees have to do it.
Yeah,
and. If you remember the a few years ago, I think they had their jerseys were black and they had Bronx Bombers on instead, or Yanks or something like that. Peter, I'll bring it to hockey. There's nothing I hate more than the nickname jersey emblem.
Like jersey, you didn't like that?
No, Bolts, Sens. That kind of crap. I mean, I understand why they did it. They did the reverse retro thing because they needed to make more money for hockey-related revenue. But honestly, I could crap on some of these jerseys. They're so bad.
Yeah, they are. They are. I think there's a big issue of trying to out-clever themselves when things just need to be simple. I think the people who really are the jersey aficionados, there's a very specific, they're not a big group, but they will buy a lot.
They will.
And you need to understand who they are and how they like things. And
they buy every single one. They have a closet of like 30 of them. They're friggin' nuts.
But as long as you're doing things that are along classical lines of things, right, they'll keep doing it. There's where the problem comes is it's a marketing play. So there's got to be other ways to do this and always just messing with the jersey. Jerseys and emblems and names are sacred in a certain way, even if they're new ones. Don't always try to out clever yourself.
Right.
Well,
I mean, and I don't wear jerseys anymore. I'm a reporter. Even like when I'm watching a hockey game, even though like everybody knows I was a Leaf fan going back to the day. And, I still have a sort of a rooting interest, but I have to maintain a level of objectivity and credibility. So I don't wear jerseys out. I don't wear T-shirts with the Leafs emblem if I had any anymore out. I just don't do it anymore. But when they did the throwback 67 jersey, which I thought was cool, and the 64 jersey, those are great. I mean, I love seeing, the old frilly Maple Leaf. That is cool. But this inventing like this, the black jersey.
I agree. I think reinventing these things is getting tiring. But paying homage, if you are a team that goes back 60, 70 years, I think there's a great opportunity to that. If you're a team like the Winnipeg Jets, who's only been around since 2011, you can go back to kind of the first year, the WH days, and kind of have some fun with it. If you're a team like the Canucks, well, you're sort of limited. That's just the curse of where it is. You can't make a program that is designed to float all boats and think it's going to be successful. Other teams are at an advantage for that, and you can't get away from it. So I think if you're a Leafs fan, a Bruins fan, a Wings fan, there's a lot more opportunity there. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah,
you got to leverage that.
I'll say this, Pete. It doesn't mean that someone like even my age isn't going to like it. Like, I don't mind what the Jets did. They went back to the 80s look. It's fine. I like it. Do I still like the original better? Yes. Did I buy a hat last year with the Jets 80s look, knowing what was coming? Sure, because I liked it. It was still – but even if they went new and had, a different look to it, but maybe still had the original patch and they just changed some things slightly, I'd probably buy it.
I do like the Canadian Air Force Jets emblem. That was okay.
Yeah.
Like with Vancouver, like I like the flying V. I like the skate with the speed marks. I'm one of the few people who actually like the rink with the hockey stick. I hate the Orca, the big C. That was terrible. So there was, but it's all personal preference. But you're right. It's like the Minnesota Wild can't exactly go back and do a throwback because they're not that old. So it's like, they have to go and use the Minnesota North Stars color, which I thought was actually cool. But, there is some inventiveness, but Jan, we're just talking about like the sort of throwback jerseys and some of these third jerseys and the Mets thing that was started with the whole Mets jerseys.
City Connect.
Yeah.
Jersey.
Yeah. This is the thing. Like in terms of football, I love the powder blue Chargers jersey. I love the Jets jersey of the Namath era.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Buffalo Bills with the white helmet and the red buffalo. Mm-hmm. Those are cool. The stuff they make up is shit, and it shouldn't be bought. But I understand why they do it, because there are suckers out there who actually have no taste and buy the stuff. Now the hat, that's the Walt Michaels Jets hat. That's fine. I like that. Throwback stuff is fine.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So I actually have a Kaprizov, the throwback Minnesota colors, because I thought the reverse retro was very cool how they did it, and I thought they did a nice job of it. Your recollection is because you're basing it on what you saw as a kid, right? And you're hearkening back to that era, which is obviously makes sense. In terms of City Connect, look, I like the jersey. Look, I'm one of those who thought there should have been more accents of purple in it. I thought if you're going to go 7-line, add a little bit more, maybe the outline.
Like Barney?
Can you let me finish? Thank you. Maybe the outline of the numbers a little bit, or maybe some of the other thing. Not like go crazy purple, but they made it very dark in terms of the gray to be more like the New York concrete. But they added in the 7-line stuff. They didn't have to go nutso like Barney, but they could have added a little bit more to maybe have it stand out a little bit, because seeing the numbers at times is not going to be easy because it's dark on dark. You wanted something to kind of make it stand out a little bit. That's all.
He didn't want a purple like a Charlie Simmer jersey or Toronto Raptors.
I love the LA jerseys. When Gretzky got traded, before when they were changing the color scheme,
right?
Cosby's in the city had in the window a mocked up version of the purple and gold jersey with Gretzky, and let me tell you, it was freaking awesome looking.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that thing was ridiculous how good looking it was. Now, the silver and black worked great also when they changed it, but the purple, if you look at a Marcel Dion or that jersey, was phenomenal looking. So don't say, the purple, you don't have to go crazy on it. It's not LA purple, it's LA blue, quote unquote. We can't call it purple.
Blue.
They never forum blue, yes. They never called it purple, right? But again,
royal blue?
No, it's forum blue.
Like
there's a specific name for it. But again, like you said, the old Jets jerseys, the Avco jerseys they wore years ago when they played as the original Jets, those are awesome looking jerseys, the original Jets jerseys with those colors on there when they were in the WHA. Some of those, look, I wouldn't go back to a lot of those styles because they clearly were the 70s styles, but some of them have stood the test of time, and that's one of them. You're talking about the Charger jerseys. You're thinking about John Hadel and Lance Allworth wearing those jerseys, and those were class jerseys that everybody wore. Same thing when the Cowboys did their third jersey also, and they wore the stuff that they wore originally. The original Cowboy jersey with the third jersey under Staub is also a pretty cool looking jersey.
They just unfortunately I'll say about it. MLB is saying that the uniforms pay tribute to the trains that connect Met fans. If that's true, they should have made the hats look like the LIRR guys' hats, the guys that are punching your ticket. That's the hat that we saw every time we went and changed to Jamaica. Make it look like that if that's what you're really trying to do.
I was going to say, if they're paying
Well,
tribute,
The conductor hat.
Well, they have the 7 line. They have the token thing on the sleeve for a token, not for Long Island Railroad.
I was going to say,
You're an old fogey, Russ, when it comes to this stuff.
if they're paying tribute to the trains, are they going to have somebody rob you when they put your jersey on? All right,
I've never seen a train robbery, Mike.
Stay in Buffalo, Mike, and shut up. All right, just let us New Yorkers manage on our own. Russ and I are doing quite well on our own over here. You can stay up in Buffalo and keep quiet over there.
I got pages of notes. Let's go.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, April 19th, 2024.
I'm Jan Levine. I'm dealing with the normal angriness. So, sorry,
Pete Tessier. No, sorry, Jan. I'm Pete Tessier, tired in not so balmy Winnipeg.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello in beautiful Buffalo, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Beautiful Buffalo with 13 years of non-playoffs. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we'll start with the news of before the playoffs. We're going to get to the playoffs and our predictions. We'll go through 8 series quickly, but we'll start with the news, the hockey news of the week, which was the Arizona Coyotes. Moving to Utah, and I'll just say this because Timothy set me off there, but I just have to say this: I have sympathy for the Arizona fans. I have sympathy for the city, for the people in Glendale or Phoenix or Scottsdale who worked for the franchise who may be losing their jobs. I have sympathy for the coach and the general manager and the players who have to pick up and move to a place that they didn't know that they're going to be moving to. Do I have any sympathy for the ownership of the Arizona Coyotes? Not a chance in hell. They have screwed this up so badly over the years. They've had many opportunities to get this right. The problem is they want either the taxpayers in Arizona to pay for it, or they want to put it as part of some billion-dollar boondoggle real estate thing. Okay, the league had to move them out because they were going to have to stay in mullet for 3 more years. The players were pissed off. They didn't want to stay there anymore under these conditions. I don't blame the league for forcing this hand. Will they go back to Arizona? Yes, probably in a few years. Hopefully it's not under the auspices of Alex Morello, because to me, he's like the Southwest version of Donald Trump. He's like he's a shell game. Anyway, but go ahead.
Here's what I got. So actually, Gary was honest about the timeline and actually said it could be up to 5 more years. So it wasn't even going to be 3 in mullet. It would have been 5 more. They thanked ASU. That's fine. They finally were at least saying it's not a league facility. They finally were, going to say that. So those things were nice to hear. The big takeaway really was right now the Coyotes are inactive. Right. So Morello has 5 years to get the land, get a building, and this whole other entertainment facility built, which Bettman said there's even things with that are slowed down. And he's got 5 years. So basically you can see what's happening here. There's a 5-year agreement here. Right. 5 years and 1 day. If it's not done, the NHL is like, Alex, we're done with you. Yep. And then they'll pursue it again with somebody else.
Now, Russ, let me just ask you before Peter.
Russ.
But let me just ask this before Peter. Did in the press conference, did they say that Morello, he's got first right of refusal for that 5 years, and if he gets back in the league, this was something that Friedman mentioned, that the $1 billion mark.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I didn't get to see every second of the press conference. I was piecing it together because it was hard to find, believe it or not.
But Peter, that was
I don't know that.
Yeah, that was the thing that was reported by Elliot Friedman that I was curious about. It's a 5-year window, and if he gets back in the league, if he wins the auction and he builds the building, that he would pay the $1 billion expansion fee, whereas Atlanta or Houston or somebody else, if they expand, they could be up to $2 billion. So he's basically got a $1 billion coupon. I don't know if that's transferable, but that might be worth something. But I don't know if this guy is ever going to get back in the league. There seems to be some resistance to that.
Well, okay, there's a couple things there, Mike. First, if you're I'm just going to put my business hat on.
Mhm.
And I think about things in the nature of ROI. If you're going to pay $1 billion plus whatever else you have to do in financing in the next 5 years
Mhm.
to put a team in Arizona that's been there for 30 and hasn't worked, I've got some real estate in Tuck to sell you that's good too.
Right.
There's no economic evidence or model that would convince me that if I was Warren Buffett wealthy, that I would throw a billion plus at this right now. Now,
Right.
the other thing with the 5 years is you may have 5 years to get this done. You have about a year to actually get moving and
Right.
get
Oh
everything
yeah,
done
otherwise
too.
the timeline just won't work.
Otherwise, you can't do it.
Right.
Right.
He's got to win the auction, and he's got to put a shovel into the ground.
And you got to win the auction, and then you've got to actually get all the approvals. Like
Yes.
this is not an easy thing.
Right.
Now, the other part with that is think of the 5 years in a different way. This is a very interesting way of saying it's almost like a PR thing of saying, we're not saying you can't do it,
Right.
but we're giving you a chance. And to prove that you're serious, you've got to do it this way because we've had mud on our face so many times. It's a very interesting play around.
Well, they put it all on Morello. So basically, if Morello fails, the Coyote fans are going to go crazy on him now.
Right. And
Yeah.
and
And
Jan,
the
I'd say more crazy on him. I think they already are going crazy. They may go more crazy on him.
And it's actually pretty interesting when you really think about it, because the NHL is literally had 30 years of mud, abuse, conjecture, venom shot at them for how everything's gone in the desert for them. And it's almost like by doing this, they've taken the focus off of their ineptitude, multiple owners losing close to $1 billion in total of equity in this thing,
right.
different projects.
Right.
And now it's this guy's fault. It's actually masterful PR.
Yeah.
It really is.
And Jan, they wipe their hands of a dysfunctional situation in Arizona, and they get an owner who they've wanted to get in to the NHL for the last, I'd say 18 months since Bettman talked to Ryan Smith. I think it was at the NBA owners meetings in New York. I think it was. So I think, now I wonder, I think they want to go back there because it's a big television market, but with the possibility of Atlanta and Houston, that's 2 top 10 and television markets. If they get them as expansion teams, they don't need to go back to Arizona. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, so let's talk about Smith first, right? So clearly, his relationship with the NBA is a positive because he's in an organization already. He's got the arena. Granted, it only seats 12,000, but they're going to upgrade it to seat hopefully 17,000. He's been pretty adamant that they're going to use the Delta Center, right? They're not going anywhere else. From a business perspective, he clearly has the business chops to make this work based upon what he's done in his non-basketball career in terms of how he built up his current company and then taking over the Jazz and what's happened there. In terms of expansion, I mean, Houston has been rumored for so goddamn long. I'm getting tired of hearing the name Houston. It's like almost hearing Quebec
Still going to be there
all over again, but we've heard it so often already. Look, there's an arena already there. There's probably an infrastructure already there.
Right.
Atlanta failed twice already, right? So they've been burned twice in Atlanta.
Yes.
But the Turner enterprise being there is the reason we all know is why they want to go down to Atlanta. I mean, that's the key driver. But now you have a little bit of a stick that's holding you up because technically, if they're going to expand and if Morello can get it done within the next 5 years, he may be one of the first choices, which means now you're choosing between Houston and Atlanta as that 34th expansion team, because you're not going to 35, because if you're going to 35, you're going to 36. And I don't know how we're making 36 teams work in the league right now. So that's going to be the sticky wicket. Look, I think in a perfect world, unfortunately, all the rumors you heard about Morello with bills not being paid and everything else, more stuff comes to the forefront. And the board of governors can go, you know what? We gave you this 5-year opportunity. but given everything that's gone on and given everything that you've done, we're now revoking it, and you
No, they're
are
not
no
gonna do
longer
that.
engaged.
They're-
That would be the perfect world if they
They would get
could do
sued.
it.
They would
there,
get
ha-
sued.
there has to be
Well,
there has to be outs in this, Russ. I mean, the
I don't
thing is,
believe Mike, I don't believe so. Everything that I've read leading up to this, they had to come up with something, devise a plan that would keep Morello from suing them. And this is the plan. He's got a 5-year exclusive. But I also believe, like Jan is saying, they're betting against it. Like, they want to be in Arizona. It's just probably not going to be with Murillo. But if he can get it done, great. Like, they're saying, hey, you could do it, do it. But they also know the odds of him getting it done are not great.
well,
So if he doesn't get it done,
yeah,
and they're betting against him, they don't really want to be there.
No, I think they do.
no, I think I think they want to be there, but I think they want to be there under the right circumstances.
Right.
When was this franchise the most successful? When they were playing in downtown Phoenix at America West, which is an old building that still exists, as a co-tenant with the Phoenix Suns. My belief, and I talked to somebody who lived in that area, they're never going to get a building built in Scottsdale or Tempe. There's too much taxpayer and government resistance to it. Glendale is a white elephant. They'll never go back there. But if they go back to downtown Phoenix as a co-tenant with the Suns, and that would mean probably that Matt Ishbia, who's the owner of the Suns, who's a mortgage billionaire, would probably be the guy who would be the owner of the team. That probably is the best case scenario, but that might be fine because they might build a new building in downtown Phoenix because that building is, I think, 40 years old, but that's going to take them more than a few years too. So
yeah. And when I say betting against it, I mean against Murillo.
Yes,
that's what they're betting against.
No, they're against him. But here's the problem. There's not a lineup of people to come and buy this thing and do it in that area.
Not yet. We don't know if that'll change.
I don't think it's going to, Russ, because they've never had a dream owner there.
No, but think about this. As much as I didn't think Atlanta could ever get revived again, 2 years ago they started that Twitter account. I followed it. That group didn't go anywhere. But then all of a sudden 2 other groups popped up.
Right.
Like, it does happen.
Yeah.
Every day there's a new billionaire in this country, and they all want a team. And so when the right billionaire happens, if one happens out there, maybe it's Austin Matthews when he keeps taking money from the Leafs. I don't know. Then maybe it'll happen.
Yeah, I mean the thing I think is in 2 of these markets. I mean, I think it's Fertitta is the name of the owner of the Rockets. I think that they said that they're doing some retrofitting of whatever you need for the ice in Houston.
They are. Just
they're doing that, and then Atlanta. I mean, I think if they link themselves to an NBA owner. And it's somebody who's got deep pockets like Fertitta does and like Ishbia does. And they want somebody to fill 41 dates. They don't mind being a second tenant in some of these buildings. Now, ideally, they want to be like say, Vegas, who right now they're the sole tenant of their building. But if they have a situation where they're going to be in a big market and they can share the building, and then get the TV revenue from being in big markets, that's probably the way that they're going to go.
I'm there a lot of times for a 1:00 hockey game with the Flyers, and they're doing a 7:00 Sixers game, and they get the turn done, no problem.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk quickly about the 2 situations that Russ and I, are dealing with on a daily basis, and that's the Flyers and the Sabres. The Flyers, they missed out on the playoffs. I think as expected, as the way they were doing coming down the stretch, but there is not going to be any changeover. Tortorella is not going to be fired.
Coaching's the same.
Everything's the same. Which honestly, Russ, I mean, I shake my head because I look at this year, and I told you, and I know you scoffed at what I said. This was a wasted year. Not in the sense that of player development in terms of the young players that he did play, but the young players that he didn't play and the players who are good on that team that he sat for long stretches. That was an abuse by Tortorella, and I think it will hurt that franchise going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was ill-advised to stick Couturier for 2 games. that whole story's changed. So nobody's going to know what is the truth or not. The truth is he sat him for a couple games. Other players didn't like it. That's a fact. Okay. So he did develop some players, some didn't. Morgan Frost didn't get to play 30 minutes in the last game. Bobby Brink only played 8 or 9. Yeah, you could say Forster developed, sure, and you can come up with a couple others. But Cam York's not a prospect, so don't use Cam York anymore. Just because he was in the minors, he's played 168 pro games. You got to stop using him as an example of young players that have developed. And they didn't do enough with that. That's a fact, too. Or at least that's my belief after looking at everything. Rocky Thompson should be fired. They have a 12% power play. It's been bad for a while now. It's the worst in their history. But also, I looked it up because I wanted to see who of similar talent has a better power play. Well, the Canadians are around 17%, and San Jose is at 20%. If those teams could be there, so could the Flyers. The Flyers have enough players. I see what they do wrong, and I'm not telling you I could fix their power play, but I could see what they're doing wrong. And just as an example, when you don't have Jamie Drysdale carrying in a puck, you're doing it wrong because that's what he should do. But anyhow, he's injured now, and maybe we'll see more of that next year. All right, so you get past that. They're still giving shortfall answers to the rebuild. They don't want to put a timeline on it, so they don't. They're saying, like with some prospects, hey, if you draft someone this year, it's probably 3 years, and 3 years is not what the average is. It's 3 to 5. That's reality. But they don't really want to spell out reality completely to the fans, even though at this point, some fans will be fine with it. But I understand there are others that think they can make the playoffs. So I think Briere did a good job of at least saying we're not getting a high-priced free agent. But again, they're still treading it by saying, well, we're not going to trade young assets for an older player. But okay, well, you did technically for Johnson, and that's fine. But they're saying they're not going to do that in the offseason. But that still doesn't mean when you trade for a 28-year-old or a 27-year-old that you're getting a guy that's going to be with you for any length of time. Mm-hmm. So I feel like they still feel like they could do this faster. So far, and this is a so far, it's Urson and Fedotov as tandem next year. Now, at the end, Briere did say something could change with that, and I think something might change with that because we don't know that Fedotov could handle 30 NHL games. I have no idea. Even Torts said he needs to get in better shape because he's not the same player he was 2 years ago. I pointed that out to people. I pointed out some stats, some deep stats, whatever. So in the end, I look at this team and I say, and I'm saying this honestly to the fans, do not expect to make the playoffs. It's nice to be on a roll, and if your team's playing well, they can play well, but look for the other things. The other things is, and they're not going to say it publicly, but they should say it behind the scenes, you're building this team for Michkov. That's what you're doing. In 2 years, he'll be out of his contract, and then he'll be free to come over. He's got 2 more years. So you're building that for year 3, so it's a Michkov team. That's what you want. That's what you should be doing.
And if Tortorella is by some miracle the coach at that point, they need to fire him because in terms of him with Michkov is an offensively creative guy. He'll have this guy trying to block shots and play defense. It's asinine. And I like Torts, but he was the wrong coach for this team. They needed a developmental coach. They needed a guy who's a good communicator. Like I said to you, Russ, they needed Don Granato. They needed a guy who was a teacher. And a guy who was going to play the young guys and let them make mistakes. And instead, they got a guy who tried to make a playoffs with a team that wasn't a playoff team. And that's why this season was a complete and utter waste of time. Now, with the Sabres, I'll just do this brief because I want to get to the playoff predictions and previews. It's not unexpected that they fired Granato. I mean, they've not made the playoffs in 13 years. Ironically, Kevin Adams came out and talked about they need an experienced head coach. They need somebody who will hold them accountable, who will hold the players' feet to the fire. So I think he's preaching to the choir when it comes to the fan base because at a certain point they just got tired of the way this team was playing. what I found funny was that every player came out. It was like a mantra. Every player came out and said, we need to be held accountable. We need this. We need to be pushed with this and that. Yeah, they said that it came out of their end of season one-on-ones with Kevin Adams. So you don't think that Kevin Adams was saying to them, this is the direction we're going to go, and you better either, if you buy into this, sure, then they're going to say that. But if you don't buy into this, you're going to say we need to be held accountable because that coach is going to do that. So I'm not sure if I buy that everybody is on the same page that they need to be held accountable. I think that these players were comfortable. I think that they were not lazy, but I think that they were maybe coddled too much. Now they're going to get somebody who's not going to do that. And that,
Maybe.
Well, that's the thing, Jan. The names out there right now, and Peter, you can talk on this as well. The names that are out there right now are Gerard Gallant, former Ranger coach, Lindy Ruff, former Ranger assistant and former Sabre and Dallas and New Jersey head coach, Craig Berube. Elliot Friedman mentioned Jeff Merrick mentioned Todd Nelson. Elliot Friedman mentioned Dean Evison. So, you're talking about recycled coaches. They want experience, but is that going to bring you to the promised land? I don't know.
Well, if you want somebody who's going to hold players accountable, if you harken back to the end of season press conferences and meetings that supposedly happened with the Rangers last year, I'm not quite sure if Gallant is your guy, because to a man, the major complaint was that they weren't. Gallant defers a lot. He doesn't necessarily run things on his own.
Right.
My opinion, if you're going to go retread, you're probably going Berube, because I think he's got the chops and the history that he's the kind of guy that will hold the players accountable, from what it seemed like, especially in St. Louis when he got there.
My guess on Berube, though, because I see him, he's been in the Philly building for the last 2 months. I think he's still kind of waiting on a job. I know he wants to do one, but I think it's going to be either he waits on Philly or he waits for another one that he feels is better than Buffalo. That's my thinking.
And Peter, right now you've got 4 in the league: Columbus, St. Louis, LA, and New Jersey with interims. They don't know whether they're going to bring those guys back. You've got Ottawa and now Buffalo. You have the possibility of Toronto, Pittsburgh, other teams, other coaching situations opening up. I think the thing that Buffalo's got to be concerned with is how attractive is the job. I mean, we know the talent, there's talent there, but how attractive is the Sabres job when you have the pressure of 13 years of not making the playoffs?
I think the Sabres have a bigger problem than simply coaching. And I think if you're going to really go in and have an understanding, there's probably some other things going on along with coaching that are affecting outcomes. Teams are more than a coach now. A coach is a representation of all the things going on that manifests itself in the ice. And I think there's a lot of times where you have coaches who are detached from GMs. They inherit coaches who they can't fire. Mm-hmm. Coaches come in systems and programs that they didn't really agree with, but they don't have the influence or the timeline or the runway to change it. And I think Buffalo's never gotten in sync with that. They've tried it with the GM. They've tried it with coaches. They've tried to align things, and something's not working there. And I would say if at this point you've spent so much bad money, you're now going into good money after bad to get yourself out of this slump. It's probably time you bring in a little more of a new agey kind of guru to talk to you about what and figure out what's going on and what you're trying to build as an organization, and not hope you fix it with just a coach. Like, it's gone on too long. And I think that's exactly what they have to do. And a lot of organizations get to this point too. I think Vancouver got that way for a little bit, and I think they got really lucky with Tocchet. I just think they got lucky. I don't know if they arrived at it the right way, but they got lucky. And we may know it may be really short-term luck, because you never know what happens next year, right? Like, they catch lightning in a bottle this year, some good things happen, blah, blah, blah. But right. A lot of organizations can go through this, and it can get really, 13 years without a win. The fans turn on you. Like Edmonton went through it for a bit. And even this year, like, it could have been really bad for the Oilers, and they luckily turned it around. And sometimes you gotta find out what's going on in other areas and fix those too. And that's where I think Buffalo is, because they've had too much talent. They've had too much talent leave. That's the part that I think is the telltale. And why do people want out of there?
Well, because I mean, it's a cycle of losing. But I think, you know, it's like this is the thing. You know how they have the 7 stages of grief. You know, with hockey, it's like you've gone past one stage, which is anger. There's a lot of anger in the Sabres fan base, and it's getting to where franchises don't want. It's getting to apathy. It's getting to the point now where fans are like, oh, they're looking more forward to the NFL draft. Like a month left to go in the regular season. People wrote off this team in terms of the playoffs in December. You know, there was no excitement after missing the playoffs by a point last year. It was like, okay, we're 8-9 points out of the playoffs. Okay, it's another year that they missed the playoffs. And then, and the thing is, they're not going new age. They're going retread. It sounds like they're going to go. I mean, Lindy Ruff is a legitimate candidate. I think Kevin Adams was asked about Lindy Ruff, and he says, I'm not going to talk about candidates, but if you look at what they're looking for, Lindy Ruff sort of fits it. So I don't know how successful it'll be. I don't think it will be successful. And I think they have to change this roster because, you know, they're too soft. They're too easy to play against. They have a lot of skill. So, I mean, it's going to be weird. Anyway, so we'll talk more about that as we go along, but I wanted to save the last half hour for our predictions here. We'll start in the West. We have Vancouver start in the Pacific. Vancouver is at one first spot in the Pacific, and they cross over with the wild card team, and they're playing the Nashville Predators, who had a really surprising season. You know, they had that rally after the All-Star break and the U2 concert, and they made the playoffs and some great years there, Yossi and Forsberg. But I'll go to you first, Peter, because you have your knowledge of the Canucks.
Yeah.
Demko was out for the last month of the season. He comes right off the IL or IR right before the start of the playoffs. So that's a little bit of a concern. I'm leaning Vancouver, but what are your thoughts on this series?
I think it'll be Vancouver in 6 or 7. I think they'll outmuscle the Preds. I think the Preds, and I don't mean it by just to get through. I don't think they're a heavier team than them necessarily. I think they're a little more talented team, a little more diversity in what they can do as a team. I'm very curious of what we've seen Nashville do to get back into this and play sustainable hockey. Is not just a trend in that they got there. Great. Can they keep pushing that forward? I think the Canucks have more to give. We saw more in the season, particularly earlier in the season, whether it was a shooting and save percentage hot streak. I think there's just a better talent and drive there. Mm-hmm. But if they don't figure it out, it could be a very, very difficult and rude awakening for them.
Jan?
Tough series to call, as you said. Getting your starting goalie back right before the playoffs is difficult, right? Nashville in itself has almost been playing playoff hockey for a while, right? They've had to battle almost to the last week of the season just to make the playoffs. Granted, they had a little bit of wiggle room. And then it wasn't until really last night where you can spin it however you want. Vegas pretty much wanted to duck Edmonton. It's kind of the only way to describe it. And that's how the matchup got done. I mean, I personally think Vancouver is a better team. I just have a hunch that UC Saros is going to stand on his head in this series, and he's going to knock Vancouver out of the series.
So you're Nashville in 7?
Nashville in 7.
Okay, Ross?
Okay. I believe that Thatcher Demko. I mean, he here in Philly when he was in the Frozen Four, he played on 2 bad hips. He had double hip surgery after he was a tough kid. And so I do believe he'll be fine in this coming back from injury. That's my point. He's able to push through where others can't. I do think there's going to be some higher scoring games. I don't believe in UC Saros that much, but I think Nashville, look, Forsberg's on a heater, and I'm sure they will try and keep the score down to some degree, but I'm going to go Canucks in 6.
Yeah, I have Canucks in 6. I think Saros will play well, but I just think Vancouver is got more firepower. The Demko situation scares me. I mean, I'm wondering, the what the injury was, and in terms of him being sharp after such a long layoff. We do know that with a lot of goaltenders, you need that regular work to be sharp. So, but I think Vancouver will win.
To that point, Mike, I think that's why they played him last night regardless.
Right.
To start getting the work. Like the game meant nothing.
Right.
So whether they won or lost, he needed to see some shots.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing for him. And now they can start working with coaching and saying, okay, we've got a few days here. This is what you need. This is what I need. He gives them some feedback. So, I think that threat vector, it's a variable, but it's maybe reduced a little bit.
Now, Edmonton had to be jumping for joy at the results of last night's games because, I don't know, Jan. I like in terms of Vegas. I mean, you're going to evade Edmonton to play Dallas. That's nuts. I mean, that's like so. I mean, I would rather play Edmonton if I were Vegas. But now Edmonton gets their old friends, the LA Kings, which I think. Unfortunately, or normally I would pick the Devil over Edmonton. But in this instance, they've beaten the Kings 2 years in a row. I don't think the Kings are up to it because of their goaltending. Cam Talbot was great the first 6 weeks of the season and hasn't been the same since. And I don't think they're going to go to David Rittich. So I picked Edmonton in 6 in this series. Russ, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm also I'm going Edmonton in 5. I think that the Kings are up and down. I do like Cam Talbot, and there's times that he could do pretty well. But right now, and I'm not looking for the Oilers to have 5-goal games. Actually, Skinner's been really good this year, so I think they've done enough. And so Edmonton 5.
Peter.
Kings in 7.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you why. There is so much pressure in Edmonton right now. No one's talking about it, but there is a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of psychological pressure on them. Now they've got to figure out if they really are who they are. The other thing about the Kings is they will dull this game down to like a raw knife's edge, and they will make things frustrating. The Oilers will get into their heads that they're getting screwed by the officials again when McDavid gets held on. You just get ready for the whining. The whining is going to come, and it's going to come hard.
Which game, Pete? How many games?
Game midway through game 1. It will be. it won't take long. Because the Kings, they will figure out what the limits are with the officials on holding up McDavid and Draisaitl and everyone. They will do everything to slow it down. And the whining will begin. So I say the Oilers in 7 because I think the Kings are going to get in their heads really.
Oh, you mean the Kings in 7?
Kings in 7, yeah.
Jan, okay. I'll just say this. The only 2 things in the Kings' favor. They have 2 of the best defensive centers in the NHL in Danault and Kopitar. So they don't have to line match as much as you would normally have to. I mean, if Knobloch splits up Draisaitl and McDavid and puts Draisaitl up the middle, then that might sort of mitigate that. But I think they're gonna put Danault and they're gonna put Kopitar on McDavid, and they'll try to beat him into the ice. The other thing is the secret sauce for the Kings might be getting underneath the skin of that calm demeanor of Evander Kane and get him to do something stupid, which we know he never does that, right? If they do that and he does something stupid and takes a bunch of penalties, they have a puncher's chance. I just think that Edmonton's too much for them. But go ahead. What's your selection?
I mean, I don't disagree with Peter. I also think that you're going to see Pierre-Luc Dubois have a pretty good series because he started to finally show some signs at the end of the year of waking up. I just think that Edmonton's firepower eventually will take ownership. I think it's going to go 7, though. I do think they are going to muck it up, slow it down, hold, cross-check, interfere, whichever term you want to use to try to slow them through the neutral zone. And it's going to take them a while to advance. Don't be surprised if Edmonton's down like 3-2 at some point in time in the series and has to rally. And if you want to see the pressure ratchet up, watch them get down 2-1 or 3-2 in the series and see what it's like in Edmonton at that point in time.
Okay. In the Central, you have Dallas crossing over with Vegas, and like before the matchups for the playoffs, Dallas was my team to come out of the West, but a first round matchup against Vegas. I mean, I know that, they're not the same team that they were last year, but they added Hurdle. They're getting Stone back. I mean, who knows if Aiden Hill can recreate what he did last year, or Logan Thompson, but that's a team that's battle tested and really deep. And I mean, there's a possibility for an upset here. I'll give you my prediction in a minute, but Peter, you go first.
I have Dallas in 6. I think Dallas is a very complete yet non-spectacular team in a weird way. Like, they have great players, they do play good hockey, but they've somehow quietly been so efficient this season.
Mm-hmm.
And Vegas gets a lot of the hype, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas just sufficiently takes care of business in 6.
Yeah. Russ, because sorry, we'll go to you next, Jan, after Russ. Go ahead, Russ.
Okay, so I think Vegas probably did some video looking. I haven't seen Dallas lately. And probably looked at how they score and how they play. And I think they probably said, you know what? We could outdo what they do because it's what we do. It's a lot like what we do. And like Mike said, they're battle tested. I think they're going to punch them in the mouth, and I think they're going to make guys like Ben and Seguin stand up, because they have a lot of good young talent. Even Robertson at times has faded in the playoffs. So I think they know that, and I think that's why they wanted this matchup. I'll go Vegas in 6.
Jan, go ahead.
This thing's going to be a war. I mean, you're going to have two teams literally throwing haymakers and beating the living tar of each other. Why? So irrespective of who I pick, the matchup for Dallas, if they do advance, is not great, right? They would have much preferred a more wide open game, because it's going to impact them if they do advance in the next round. I do think this is the series that Thomas Harley has that breakout publicly. He started last year. He had a good year. I think America is going to finally start to realize how good Thomas Harley is. On the Vegas side of the house, let's see how healthy Mark Stone is, because he's a material difference maker. As you said, Mike, we don't know which Aiden Hill we're getting, right? Are we getting the Aiden Hill from last year, or are we getting the guy that basically has been injury prone all year, and Logan Thompson has carried this team?
Right.
I'm going to go by a skin's breath and literally take Vegas in 7, but wouldn't be shocked if Dallas advanced in 7. I think this one's going the distance. I think it's razor thin between the two teams, and I think from a matchup, Dallas was probably a week ago thinking, yeah, we're going to have an easier matchup. And last night, they probably watched the game and went, oh, crap, now we got to go against Vegas and have that kind of a matchup. I think for them, it's probably the worst kind they wanted.
I was saying all year, Peter, that the team that won the Central was going to have an advantage over because the 2-3 was going to be one of Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas, and those teams would beat the crap out of each other, and the winner would sort of skate through the first round. Well, they're not skating through because they're playing Vegas. They may be more beaten up if they beat Vegas than the Jets or the Avs. I had Dallas in 7, but let's just say this: I'm in a playoff fantasy hockey pool that's a bidding. I was going to bid up on Dallas Stars. I'm not doing it this now because I don't know if they're going to get past the first round, and I don't know how deep they're going to go. I'm a little scared of that matchup. Now, I'll go to you first on this one, Peter, because Winnipeg is involved, and it's the Jets and the Avs. Winnipeg's got the home ice advantage. I'm not sure how much that means. The Avs are really good, but the thing that's been scary about them the last month of the season is Georgiev looks like he's completely run out of gas. And there was some talk, and I don't know if it's going to happen, that they're going to play Ahonen they're the backup in the playoffs. I can't imagine that they do that unless there's some injury. I would think they would go with Georgiev, but that kind of talk, I don't know if it's motivational or whatever, but what is your read on the series?
Well, I gotta take a homer approach to this and say the Jets first. And I can't remember. I put it into I gotta remember what I said it was. I think I said they were.
You said Winnipeg
in 7. I said Jets in 7. I think it could be even Jets in 6, but I'm being conservative. This series. So here's a little interesting thing about the Jets. Out of all the playoff teams, all 16 teams, they scored the 4th or 5th least amount of goals, and they allowed the least amount of goals.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed 199 goals this season. That's the lowest. The next is the Panthers at 200. So clearly, this series is going to be completely dependent on Connor Hellebuck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just will be. He has to play like being the front runner Vezina candidate that he is. They also have to do something that they did in the last game last week against the Avs. They have to maintain their ability to hold up the transition game of their opposition. If they can do that, they're going to have a chance because they're not the fastest team.
Right.
They don't score a lot of goals either. So you have to do you have to have the two things that work that allows your goalie to have a chance.
Right.
If they can't, if Hellebuck goes kind of January form for a little bit like he did, or if they don't figure, or Colorado figures out a way to counter their transition defense, it could get ugly. But you never know. I mean, I agree with you on Colorado's goaltending.
Yeah.
That could be their Achilles heel right now. So I say Jets in 7. It could go the other way, but it could also be Jets in 6.
Jan, the one thing I look at in this series as sort of like a thumbnail sketch, Hellebuck is better. The Jets have the goalie advantage. The best forward of anybody is McKinnon. The best defenseman in the series is Makar. I think the best pairing, if they keep them together, is Makar and Taves. And I think the only way Winnipeg wins is if they beat that top pairing. They slam them in the wall every chance they get and wear them down, because you know that Bednar is going to play that top pairing if they keep them together 23, 24, 25 minutes a night. So what are your thoughts on the series?
So I'm the one who predicted Ottanen to basically end up replacing Georgiev in the series. I've been saying that for a while, given how bad Georgiev has played, right? I have a feeling that they're going to end up having to change goalies. We said for Winnipeg to win, Helly has to be off the charts, Vezina type candidate. Mm-hmm. Josh Morrissey has to have a monster series in terms of controlling the back end. Up front, you're going to have to get massive production from both Nick from Ehlers and Connor. We know what you're getting from Scheifele, but those two guys have to do it. And I think the X factor is honestly going to be Cole Perfetti. I think that's the kind of guy who can have a big series, who's come a long way, in my opinion, this year. And Peter can attest to it. He's actually had a much better year than I think people have recognized. He's had a really, really solid year. On paper, Colorado is the better team on paper, except in goal. And I do think that goal is going to make the difference. I'm gonna say Winnipeg in 7, but if you tell me Colorado wins in 7, I wouldn't be shocked either. I do think you're gonna get a goaltending change some point in time during the series, just because Georgiev just hasn't looked good, and I don't think Bednar is gonna wait. I don't think you can say, "Oh, we'll wait till he plays his way into it." Obviously, you can't do that in the playoffs, but I do think it's going to be McKinnon trying to put the team on his back and make up for if there's any questionable net minding.
I picked Colorado in 7, but the one thing, Peter, now I know Brad Lambert played. Did he play late in the season? Did they call him up, or is
he just scored a goal?
Yeah, he did. What did happen? I was at a conference yesterday, so I missed the game. I have to go back.
Yeah, he scored a goal last night.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether he might be in the mix as a 4th line guy, or
Lambert got an assist.
An assist, okay.
Oh, an assist, he didn't get a goal. Okay.
Yeah, he got an assist on Velarde's first goal. From Vardy's goal.
Yeah. I mean, some teams will bring up a prospect late in the season and then insert them in the playoffs, fresh legs, something like that. So maybe that's something. I don't know. We'll see. But I had Colorado in 7. Okay, so let's swing to the East.
Well, hold on.
Wait, did Russ give his prediction?
I'm sorry.
Give Russ a chance?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Russ. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's I have Colorado in 7. I know everybody's going to focus on this goaltending. I think what you need to focus on is the fact that while Winnipeg is a really good team on paper, they have a Jekyll and Hyde thing going this whole year.
Right.
And Colorado does understand how to play in these kind of games. McKinnon, Rantanen, they have size, speed, and the toughness. They have it all. If you want to say that in net they're going to have some problems, I'll agree. But I'm also going to agree that's why Colorado will take 7 to win.
Okay. All right. Let's swing to the East, and not to pay this series short shrift, Jan, but of the 8 series, I think the one that is the most clear is the Rangers and Capitals. I have the Rangers in 5 because Capitals are not a playoff team. They made the playoffs, but mostly because it was a turtle race, and they were the one that had, that got lucky that Torts pulled the goalie and allowed TJ Oshie to score. I'm not saying that the Rangers are going to underestimate them, because they would do that at their own peril, but all evidence to the contrary. Henrik Lundqvist, who said that the worst goaltender in the Eastern Conference going into the playoffs is Ilya Samsonov. I think the worst of and he played well, but Charlie Lindgren is the worst of the 8 goaltenders. And I think
I'm going to give you a couple things, because honestly, I'm tired of having smoke blown up my team's rear end already. So I'm going to level set a little bit.
Okay.
What happened in 2019, Mike?
Oh, I know. I'm not saying
Columbus beats Tampa. What happened in last year?
I know.
Florida beats Boston. Now, granted, both teams might have been better. Charlie Lindgren has played 3 games against the Rangers. He has a .955 save percentage in those 3 games. He also catches right-handed, which is a difference, because if you're not used to it, you shoot on the wrong side. Charlie Lindgren carried this team down the stretch, going 4-1-1 in the last 6 games of the season to get Washington in the playoffs. There is no way, shape, or form, as we know what happens in the playoffs, that you ever underestimate and ever predict. I know guys predicting sweeps. I'm like, guys,
no.
If you know your Rangers history, the Rangers will take 7 games to get past this round. That's their history. Now, do I think it's going to happen? No. Should the Rangers win in 5? Yes. But I'm also quite cognizant of the Tom Wilson effect, and who knows what he's going to do. I also know the Alexander Ovechkin effect, who finally got hot down the stretch, and he could be a difference maker. I know that Connor McMichael is a guy I'm concerned a little bit about, because he finally found his game the last third of the season. On paper, Rangers have all the advantages. They should win in 5. That said, if you don't think I'm going into game 1 scared, you know what? That they're going to find a way to lose that game, and all the pressure is going to be on them. If you want to hear pressure, wait till the Rangers go down 2-0. And if you think Edmonton had pressure, go ahead and look at the New York media and see what's going to happen here, and then come back and talk to me.
I completely understand what your point of view, Jan. I'll just say this. Maybe my opinion was colored by the fact that Washington came to Buffalo twice in the last 2 weeks of the regular season, and Charlie Lindgren was a sieve in both games. Those are probably the 2 worst games that he played down the stretch, and they're minus.
They were minus 37.
Yeah.
They make their bones by mucking up the game, and by scoring down low. Right. This is the kind of series where I've written Jacob Trouba and Braden Schneider have to put on their big boy pants and make sure they clear the front of the net and prevent Washington from mucking up the game and scoring down low. Their shots are down this year. All their numbers are down this year. But Spencer Carberry has learned that this is not a high-flying team. It's a team that's going to make their bones below the hash marks and try to score from in front of the net and get dirty goals. That's where most of their goals are scored, in what they've called the home plate area. That's where the Rangers are going to have to be really good and really attentive to details in order to get past this round.
And unlike Torts, Russ, Carberry played his young guys. He played McMichael. He played
them all.
He played them all.
He's done a good job with that. Yeah, I think he did the right thing. I think he could win the Jack Adams. I look at it. I want to tell you, Lindgren played great against the Flyers in a must-win game, and the Caps defense played really well, bottling up the Flyers. And they're going to try and do that same thing against the Rangers. I get it. The Rangers have better players, but when you do play that kind of defense in this league, sometimes it works. I spoke to Mike Vogel, who nobody covers the Caps better than him in my estimation, and he said the reason the differential is so bad is because they had a lot of close wins and bad, blowout losses. And so that's how you get a differential like that. But they're a pretty good team. I'm still going to take the Rangers in 5. I think it could go to 6. I don't think it'll go past that. And Laviolette will have this team ready. I'm not worried about game 1.
Yeah.
My surprise thing will be Ryan will score on his brother at some point, whether it's, a guy like Panarin or somebody trying to set him up just to try and get a mental edge. I think they'll try and do that because the Rangers are kind of, sneaky like that. But
and there was some talk that Ryan Leonard was going to sign, and they might insert.
Yeah, that didn't happen. I will say this: people could say what they want about Panarin. There's always, I don't know who these people are. They come out of the woodwork and they rip them. Last year he didn't score enough. Now this year he scored 46 goals, but he's not doing this enough. Look, he's on a heater right now, and he's one of the most dangerous guys in the league.
Yeah.
So one quick thing on what Russ said. So just in terms of the minus 37 differential post All-Star break, the differential is minus 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter, what are your thoughts on this series?
Oh, I think it's Rangers in 6.
Okay.
I understand why Jan's got the historical nerves. Like I totally get that. Like
I'm calm. I'm a realist. I'm always a realist.
You're being totally practical about what you've experienced before, and I totally agree. I just think there'll be a bump here and there, but they'll just get to work and get it done. They're a very good hockey team.
Dan and I are of the same mind with the teams that we cover for Hockey Buzz, and we'll get to that in a minute. But
I'm a realist. By the way, Panarin had 49 goals, Russ, not 46. Just to
yes,
and he missed and he missed his 50th. By the way, because I was at the game against Montreal that Sunday night, and he hit the post on an empty netter. And I remarked to my daughter saying, I remember going to my daughter going, I'm wondering if that post is going to cost him 50.
Matthews missed his 70th by that much.
Yeah. I saw Matthews do that too.
So okay, of the 8 series, this one is the most boring, and that's Carolina and the Islanders. Honestly, I mean, if
have you watched, Mike?
Yeah, well, no.
Have you watched it all?
Yes, I have, Jan. And honestly, if you were going to assign like games to like ABC, TNT, ESPN, this is the game that's on friggin' True TV or the NHL Network, where 6 people are watching it. Because, the people in Raleigh and people on Long Island will watch it, but nobody else will. But I picked Carolina in 6. Carolina's the better team. I mean, at some point, I would think that Roy is going to go back from Varlamov to Sorokin, but he loves Varlamov, and he had Varlamov in Colorado, and Varlamov got him into the playoffs, so maybe not. But Russ, I mean, I think the Hurricanes are the much better of the 2 teams, can score more, especially after they got Gensel. What are your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, no question. Gensel does energize them, and Anderson maybe has the requisite amount of rest because of the way the season went. I do think this is the first time Brind'Amour would actually switch to Kochetkov if something happened, because I think he finally has confidence in him. I did get a message from NL King, Mike's favorite, and he did say that Mike Johnson was saying, like, I don't know if the Canes will break a sweat or something to that degree. And, I get it. It's easy to sort of downtrodden the Islanders because maybe, they are a little boring. But Patrick Roy has done a heck of a coaching job. It didn't look like it was going to take at first, and it took. And I do think the Islanders, because they have a lot of veterans and do know how to play ugly hockey, will get Carolina to play ugly hockey. Because if you do that to Svechnikov, you do essentially, mitigate him. Because that's the one thing. He doesn't like playing a tough game. That's not his game. So I do think it's Carolina in 6, but I don't think this is going to be like an easy 6. I don't.
Jan, Anderson went 1.84 goals against, 13-2 in 16 starts, and a .932 save percentage. He's going to get the net to start the series, but based on the way he has played in the playoffs in the past, Russ is probably right. They're going to have Kochetkov sitting at the side of the stage, warming up his vocal cords, ready to come in.
And Mike's not biased at all when it comes to Freddie Anderson, as we all know, because that's his favorite player in the NHL right now. So in terms of that, let me couple things. So first of all, the Islanders getting Noah Dobson back is huge. He is a Norris Trophy type candidate, a guy who has materially stepped up his game this year. What I think gets lost is the Islanders actually have Brock Nelson, who scored 34 this year, and he seems to get lost in the mix a lot, who had a great year. Barzal and Horvat have had a very good connection.
Yeah, Horvat's
The
had a great
Varlamov
year.
thing is interesting. The Varlamov thing is kind of interesting because, like as you said, there's the history there. But honestly, Varlamov carried his team down the stretch and deserves to be in net. Moreover, Sorokin right now. In terms of the flip side, I think Carolina not having Jesper Fast actually makes a difference, because Fast is one of those guys who's, especially in the playoffs, is one of those Swiss Army knives. Offensively, Gensel is huge. He's a guy that's the difference maker that they needed, and a guy they desperately needed on this team. Look, if you look at it stepping back before the playoffs, Washington did not want to play Carolina. Washington matches up horribly against Carolina, and Carolina was probably skipping to the loop, hoping they got Washington, because that would be an easy series. Playing the Islanders is a hard series. It's almost like looking at Dallas Vegas in terms of the physical nature you're going to see in this playoffs. I think the Islanders are going to try to impose their will on them. You're going to see the energy line. You're going to see Cizikas out there a lot. You're going to see Martin out there a lot. You're going to see Clutterbuck out there a lot. They're going to attempt to muck it up. They're going to attempt to slow down the game. They're going to attempt to be physical. This is one of these series that's going to probably go 6. It'll go 6 at least. It wouldn't shock me if it goes 7. I'm going to give the Islanders a puncher's chance. I do think that Carolina is a much better team. I'm going to take Carolina in 6 or 7, but I'm going to say that this is going to be a much closer series than people want to believe it's going to be.
Just as a request from Matt in the chat, he wanted me to break out the sign. So
Mike, Islander fans hate that sign. And I bet you there's a bounty on that. I'm just guessing. I'm telling you.
They can bite me because
they don't like when you break that out.
It's in the shop. It's going to be laminated next, probably by Monday. So Peter, on that series, Carolina Islanders, where are you?
Yeah, I have Carolina in 5.
Okay.
I think it'll just, they'll figure it out. Brenda Moore is going to get this moving. It's really, I just don't. I mean, congrats to the Islanders. You muscled through. You got in there, but I don't. Unless something happens, I just think Carolina will sort of wake up and be the better team that they are, and just get to work.
And Sorokin is the Georgiev of the East. They burned him out playing as much as they did early in the season. All the shots that he faced, because they were terrible defensively under Lane Lambert, and he didn't play particularly well when Roy came in, and that's why they went to Varlamov. So, okay. And opposed to this series, which I think is the dog of the 8, the one that I'm breaking out the popcorn machine, putting some extra butter on it, and sitting in front of my TV along with a tub of ice cream to watch.
Which ice cream, Mike?
Let's see here. Dublin mudslide from Ben and Jerry's.
Okay.
Yeah. That's pulling that one out of my ass.
Well, mudslide, yeah.
Yeah, the Florida there you go. The Florida Tampa series. My God, this one is going to be good. I mean, they're going to beat the hell out of each other. They hate each other. There's top end talent there. It could be Steven Stamkos last series in Tampa Bay if he decides to go free agency, which I think he will. Vasilevsky is back. I mean, after struggling early in the season, he played well down the stretch. I think the Dumba edition and the Duclair edition were really good for Tampa Bay. And Kucherov, I mean, he's playoff tested and he's one of the best players in the league, although I hate him. But he's just a great player. I'm picking Tampa Bay in 7. I think I don't know how much of an upset it is because, Tampa Bay, even though they don't have the depth that they had, they're still fantastic. So, Peter, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I had Florida in 6. I hate to say it, but I think the Panthers got stronger and better since last year. And while Tampa is the original Vegas, rising up from the ashes at the end of the season and all the alleged cap shenanigans and stuff, whatever it is, they're the originators of that. Don't give Vegas credit that they don't deserve. They're just an older team. And I don't know. I think Florida, it's nice to see a team who failed in the Stanley Cup Finals come back and wind it up again to go again, because it's rare. More often than not, when you lose in the finals, you don't make it back and you don't come out on top again.
Right.
I think they're in a healthier position. It's going to be a battle, but I say Florida in 6.
Okay, Jan, the couple factors here. Verhaeghe was out for, I think, about 3 weeks with an injury. Came back the last game, didn't look out of place, looked pretty healthy. So I don't think that's a factor. Ekblad was out late in the season. He's supposed to be good for game 1. I mean, honestly, like Tanner Jeannot is probably going to be running Ekblad into the back wall at 5 minutes into the first period. And you're going to have so many assassins on each of these teams, like Lomborg and Cousins and Bennett. And on the other side, Jeannot and Nick Paul. They're just going to be slamming each other. That's why, like I said, it's going to be great hockey. It's going to be physical hockey. What do you think on this one?
I mean, as you said, it's 2 high-power teams. Tampa Bay has definitely gotten better as the year wore on. Remember, Vasilevsky was out to start the season, right? Their goaltending was a mess. Their team was a mess. Braden Point has had a very underrated season that nobody's talked about at all. Phenomenal season. There's star power up and down the lineups. There's physical play up and down the lineups. There's 2 elite goalies because Bobrovsky's clearly elite and Vasilevsky's elite. As you said, there's a intense hatred between the 2 teams. Probably doesn't hurt that they're both from the same state, but irrespective of that, there's an intense dislike between the 2 teams, as Peter said, right? Last year, Florida was playing with house money, right? Them coming back is interesting because they could have just ridden that and said, you know what, we made our run surprisingly last year, but they got better and Zito went all in to get them there this year. I'm going with a gut feel. I just have a feeling that Stamkos is going to have an absolutely phenomenal series and find a way to get a game winner in game 7. I'm going to say it's going to go 7. Wouldn't shock me if you have a couple of overtime games, given how evenly matched these 2 teams are. Yep. I'm going to go Tampa Bay in 7.
That's what I had. Russ, go ahead.
Okay. I think this is a series where finally, like Vasilevsky, because of missing all that time, will be fresher than he has been the last couple of years. Tampa's still razor thin on team depth, though. Razor thin. And even if Ekblad goes out, Florida's used to Ekblad being out. Like that's not gonna kill them anymore.
Right.
I don't think Tampa has anybody like Matthew Tkachuk currently. And I think he's the huge difference maker here. He's at the height of his game.
Yeah.
I just look at Florida and I say they got a lot of the bases covered, and this is Bob's best year. And a lot of people don't even want to talk about that because they used to like the narrative where he was the washed-up $10 million goalie. Well, he has kind of bounced back in the last couple of years. And this year especially, I looked it up, he's faced over 1,500 shots, guys. He has really been a workhorse. So I look at it. I do respect Tampa. I respect guys like Stamkos. They are a little older, but I'm picking the Panthers in 7.
Yeah, there's an argument that Bobrovsky's been the most consistent goaltender all year. He's been good from beginning to end. So, this is not slagging on Florida. Florida is great. They won the division. I just think Tampa has really surged in the last couple months, and they added a couple depth pieces that really helped them.
So has Tampa surged, or have they finally gotten back to where we expected them to? They should have been. I think this is the narrative.
I think it's both. I think it's both
okay.
Because I think the addition of Duclair helped them offensively for sure. Yeah. Gave them a little bit of speed that they were liking, right? And then Vasilevsky did take a little while after he came back to find his form. So that you can argue with. He was just settling back to the normal. He was regressing to the mean basically because was slow coming back initially. He just found the form that we normally expect out of him.
Yeah, and adding Dumba, who can play 19, 20 minutes a night with Sergachev being out, he takes a little bit of the heat off of Hedman, who was playing 25 minutes a night. Now, I don't know if Sergachev is going to be able to come back. I haven't heard any reports of him skating or anything like that.
No, I don't think he's coming back.
Yeah,
he won't be back. He's definitely not back round 1, they said. Definitely out for round 1.
Okay. All right. Save the best for last, and I'll make my prediction.
Shocker, they are. Who would have thought that was going to happen?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, we'll start with you, Jan, since you're just the ray of positivity here. Bruins, Leafs.
Compared to you, I am.
Bruins blow the Atlantic Division. The last 2 games losing to Washington and Ottawa at home. Some people make the argument that maybe they did it on purpose so they could face Toronto. I look at the Bruins and I'm not gonna give I'll give my thing last. Your thoughts on the series and who do you pick?
I mean, it's kind of a contrasting styles, right? You look at Toronto and they're the offensive quote unquote juggernaut, right? You look at Boston and you're going, how the hell are they winning with those two guys as their top two centers based upon the expectation? But Boston found a way to win. I think we saw a little kinks in the armor down the stretch in Boston and things that concern me. Goaltending, it's kind of hard not to take what's in Boston. I can't believe in Ilya Samsonov. I'm sorry, I just can't. But I just have a hunch that Toronto's got a little found money now based upon where they landed in the playoffs and who they're facing. And I'm going to go Toronto in 6.
Wow. Okay. Peter, you go next.
Toronto in 9, but it takes 2 games next season. I always go back to the 2011 series when Vancouver had to play Boston the next season in Boston, and Cody Hodgson scored the game winner, and all the Vancouver Canucks fans called it Game 8, like it mattered. And so I think for this one, I'm going to say Boston in 7, but it's not going to be an easy 7. That's for sure. I actually think the Leafs have a legit chance. It's just, I always look at this as if I was putting money down on it. Where would I put the money? I'd say Boston 7, but it's not an easy 7.
Right. Russ.
Yeah, I think the Leafs have had a good season. They do have some injuries. I expect those guys to play. Maybe McMahon doesn't play, but Nylander will play. I look at it. I don't care how Boston ended the season. I actually think it's probably better that they ended it this way based on what happened last year, that they'd be pissed off coming into this. They have the better goaltending. In my eyes, they have the best defender in both those games in McAvoy, and he can play 28 minutes, even 30 if he has to. And so they're going to do things like that. I'm going to look at it like this. I do think there's still going to be psychological warfare going on because they know they have the edge that way. If Marchand were to score the first goal, I kind of wonder how the Leafs would react. And so I'm going to take Bruins in 6 because I still think they have their number.
Okay. The psychological aspect is definitely a part of it. I looked at this 2 months ago and I said, okay, the Leafs are the underdog in both a series against Florida and a series against Boston. So who would I rather them play if I were somebody who had a vested interest in it? And I said Boston because Boston does not have Bergeron and does not have Krejci. They do not have Chara anymore. They don't have Milan Lucic. They don't have Tim Thomas or Tuukka Rask. But they still have the better goaltending in the series, Swayman or Ullmark. And if you look at their stats, they're remarkably the same. They split halfway down the middle. The save percentage is off by 100th of a point. The goals against is exact. They're probably going with Swayman in the series, and they're better than whoever the Leafs play. It's probably Samsonov to start the series. Defensively, Russ, they have the 2 best defensemen in the series in Lindholm and McAvoy. Riley's probably 3rd. The Leafs are better in terms of depth with the additions they made at the deadline. But in terms of quality, the Bruins are better, and team defense-wise, the Bruins are better. The Bruins have the psychological advantage because they got that rat Marchand who will get underneath the Leafs' skin. He'll run people. He'll do, guys like Patrick Maroon, who they added at the deadline. The only thing he'll do is run people, which is he's good at.
He scores some goals occasionally.
No, he does, but he's good at running people. And that's
you mean like 400 plus in his career right now? You mean like that? I mean, everybody talks about guys like that, and if you had a Brad Marchand on the Leafs, you'd be kissing his feet every day and Tuesday. He's Ken Linsman to the nth degree.
No doubt. He's the type of player, Jan, like anybody with Darcy Tucker. If you had Darcy Tucker on your roster, you loved him. The 31 other teams, you hated his guts. No doubt. He's a Hall of Famer. I'm not taking anything away in terms of his quality as a player, but he's a rat. He's a guy who just gets under, and Pasternak has adopted some of those rat qualities too.
Oh, stop!
He has.
Pasternak has become a dirtier player in the last couple of years. There's no question about that, Russ.
They're taking after Ovechkin, these star players who decide.
Kucherov is dirtier. I'll say that.
Yeah, they sewered.
Kucherov has gotten away with. Well, Kucherov is dirty. And Ovechkin's gotten away with the leaving his skate on checks for years, but that never got called anyway.
But the defensively, team defense, the Bruins are better. Goaltending, they're better. I think the Leafs have the advantage up front, especially if Matthews and Tavares can dominate on the top two centers that the Bruins have, Coyle and Zacha. Now, Zacha's had a good year. Coyle is physical, and whenever he's played the Leafs, he's really uses his size to his advantage. But the Leafs, for them to win the series, they're going to need Matthews to score at the pace that he has been all season, and they're going to need Tavares. Tavares finished this year very strongly. Now, Russ mentioned Nylander. He hadn't scored in the last 11 games of the regular season. He must be nursing something because they sat him out practice. So will he play game one? He probably will play. But that just calls into question now. Remember, they were without Marner for a month. And they didn't see a drop off, but they had Nylander in the lineup. Now Marner is back, but who knows how close to 100% he is. And if Nylander is struggling, then that's more pressure on the guys like Bertuzzi and Domi.
Pressure on Nyes, who's still a kid.
And they move Nyes up to the second line. So the advantage in this series is psychological. And that's where I look at it. I look at it this way. Do I think the Leafs can beat them? Yes. Do I think they will beat them? No. Why? Because they haven't yet. They've lost 7 games in a row to the Bruins in the regular season. They've lost 3 series over the last decade, all in 7 games. It's going 7 games, and the Bruins are going to win at TD Garden. I mean, prove me wrong.
They can't go to 7.
They can't go to 7. They have to win. They have to win it in 6. Yeah. In the ghost of Nathan Horton and Tuukka Rask and all those guys.
Tiny Thompson,
Bill Schmidt. There you go, Frankie, Mr. Zero Brimzik.
Frankie Brinsick.
Yep, there you go,
Mr. Zero.
And Dallas Smith and all the guys who tried to beat on Pat Quinn when he took out Bobby Orr in 1969. I'm just saying. Yeah, all those ghosts will be welled up, and Jack Edwards in his final series or his final playoffs will be making Revolutionary War comments and all that.
Bill Baruco, is he not going to stick up for the Leafs? I mean,
no. But I think it's Bruins in 7. Prove me wrong, but I don't see the Leafs winning. So anyway, we ran a little bit over there. Thanks, guys. We will be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, for Peter Tessier, I'm Mike Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.